Tom Cruise doesn't talk about Nicole Kidman. Not in interviews, not in memories, not even in passing. It's as if she never existed. But a single joke Nicole made 24 years ago, "I can wear heels now," has come back to haunt him. Because it reveals the truth he's tried to bury for decades. Tom Cruise has finally broken his silence on Nicole Kidman's divorce from Keith Urban. Except he hasn't said a single word. And that silence, that quiet, calculated silence, is louder than any headline could ever be. Because when a man like Tom Cruise chooses to say nothing, it's never by accident. It's a performance. A deliberate act of erasure that says, "You no longer exist in my story." Now, as Nicole Kidman files for divorce from Keith Urban after 19 years of marriage, fans can't help but notice something haunting. The same pattern, repeating itself 2 decades later. The same irreconcilable differences. The same blindsiding heartbreak. The same silence that follows. Except this time, the silence isn't just from Keith. It's from Tom, the man who once held Nicole's entire world in his hands and then vanished from her life without a trace. 24 years of silence, no acknowledgement, no reflection, not a single public word. Just nothing. And then, out of nowhere, a 24-year-old clip resurfaces. A single joke from a 2001 interview that's suddenly breaking the internet all over again. Nicole Kidman sitting across from David Letterman, smiling politely through the tension as he says, "You look fantastic. I heard you're getting divorced. How's that going?" She laughs awkwardly. The audience chuckles, and then, with that famous calm smile, she delivers a line that isn't really a joke at all. "Well," she says, "I can wear heels now." The crowd erupts with laughter. Nicole lifts her shoe, pretending to joke, but her eyes say something else entirely. It's the look of a woman trying to turn pain into humor. That moment, that one sentence, would come to define everything about her life after Tom. Because "I can wear heels now" wasn't about fashion. It wasn't about height. It was about freedom. It was about a woman reclaiming the space she had given up for someone else. Nicole Kidman is 5'11". Tom Cruise is 5'7". But the joke wasn't about inches. It was about power. For 10 years, she had been quietly shrinking herself, emotionally, spiritually, publicly, to make someone else comfortable. And that's the part the world missed back then. They laughed at the line. They quoted it in magazines. But no one asked what it really meant for a woman to say she could finally stand tall again. Now, 2 decades later, that same clip is viral again, because history is repeating itself. Nicole is once again ending a long marriage. Once again facing the same line in the divorce paperwork, irreconcilable differences. And once again, the man she shared her life with has gone silent. Different man, same silence. Back in 2001, when Tom filed for divorce, Nicole was completely blindsided. She had no idea it was coming. He filed on February 5th. One day they were planning their future together, the next she was reading headlines. From that day until now, Tom Cruise has maintained what can only be described as deliberate surgical silence. Not once has he spoken publicly about Nicole Kidman. Not in interviews, not in memoirs, not in moments of nostalgia, zero. In the 24 years since their split, the only words Tom has ever said publicly about her came in a single interview in 2025. A casual remark about casting her in Eyes Wide Shut. His words, "She's a great actress." That's it. 3 words. After a decade together, 2 adopted children, and an entire life built side by side, she's a great actress. That is the sum total of Tom Cruise's acknowledgement of Nicole Kidman since 2001. And that's silence. It isn't neutral. It's not passive. It's purposeful. Because silence, in the hands of someone as calculated as Tom Cruise, is a weapon. It erases history. It rewrites the story so that the other person simply disappears. Nicole's name was quietly removed from the narrative of his life. From interviews, from retrospectives, from red carpets. It was as if their 10 years together had never happened. And maybe that's what makes this so haunting, because it's happening again. When Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman's marriage began to crumble in 2025, the same pattern reappeared. He too went silent. He too had already emotionally checked out long before the divorce papers were filed. Insiders revealed Keith signed the custody agreement months before the public even knew there was trouble. Quietly, neatly, efficiently. He agreed Nicole would have the majority of parenting time with their daughters, and then went back on tour as if nothing had changed. No posts, no interviews, no statements. Just silence, 2 men, 2 decades apart. and both chose to leave her in silence. In her early interviews after the first divorce, Nicole never sounded angry. She sounded lost. In 2002, she told Vanity Fair, "I was willing to give up everything. I was reeling with Tom and I loved it. I would have walked to the end of the earth. That meant giving up a lot of things that were very important to me. She loved him so much she disappeared into him. And the heartbreaking part? She didn't even realize it until it was too late." By 2006, 5 years after the divorce, she still said, "That was a major shock, but he was lovely to me and I loved him. I still love him." Even after everything, she still loved him. But Tom, he said nothing. He simply continued his life like those 10 years had been erased. And if you look closely, you start to see the blueprint. Tom files for divorce in 2001, citing irreconcilable differences. Keith's divorce papers in 2025, same phrase. Tom's reason, divergent careers. Keith's reason, lives moving in different directions. In both cases, Nicole fought to save something that was already gone. In both cases, she tried to hold on to a man who had already left emotionally. It's like watching the same movie play out twice, 20 years apart. Only this time, the ending feels even colder. And here's what makes this pattern so tragic. Tom's silence wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about control. When you erase someone publicly, you erase their power. You make them invisible. For Nicole, it meant being written out of his story completely. No mentions, no shared memories, no acknowledgement that she ever mattered. That's what she's facing again now with Keith. He hasn't said a word. He hasn't defended her, explained himself, or offered any closure. He just disappeared. And that kind of silence, that refusal to speak, then can be more painful than anger or betrayal. Because anger still means you care. Silence means you don't even acknowledge the other person exists. So when people ask, why won't Tom ever talk about Nicole? The answer might be more complicated than anyone realizes. There are theories, of course. Some say it's because of Scientology, that the church labeled Nicole a suppressive person after their split, meaning Tom is forbidden from associating with or even acknowledging her. Others believe it's legal. Confidentiality clauses in their divorce agreement that prevent either of them from discussing their marriage publicly. But the darkest theory is also the simplest, that Tom doesn't see Nicole as part of his story anymore. That he's rewritten his life to remove her completely. And that level of detachment, the ability to erase an entire decade to pretend it never happened, reveals something far more chilling about the way Tom processes love, loss, and control. Because when Tom Cruise is done with you, you don't just leave his present. You disappear from his past. That's not heartbreak. That's erasure. And maybe, just maybe, that's what Nicole has been trying to recover from all along. Because when she joked, "I can wear heels now," she wasn't talking about shoes. She was talking about reclaiming her own space, her identity, her visibility. She was talking about finally being tall again, after spending 10 years making herself small for a man who preferred her that way. Now, decades later, the same pattern is repeating, and the world is finally starting to see it for what it is. Not coincidence, not bad luck, but a painful, learned cycle of loving men who know how to disappear without a sound. And that's silence. That's the loudest thing of all. Silence is supposed to be peaceful, but in Hollywood, it can be a weapon. And for Nicole Kidman, silence has never meant peace. It has meant absence. It has meant watching men she once loved vanish without explanation, leaving her to hold the weight of stories they refuse to tell. When Tom Cruise left in 2001, he didn't just walk out of a marriage. He vanished from her narrative, overnight. And for the next 24 years, he kept it that way. No acknowledgement, no memory, no shared reflection. As if a decade of marriage, 2 adopted children, and a life built together were nothing more than a chapter he edited out of his autobiography. But the deeper truth behind Tom's silence is darker than anyone imagined. Because the absence isn't random, it's controlled, it's strategic, and it's a pattern that's been repeating itself in Nicole's life ever since. After the divorce, Nicole tried to make sense of it all. She did what she's always done, turned her pain into performance. In the early 2000s, she buried herself in work. Moulin Rouge, The Hours, The Others. Films that all, in one way or another, explored women trapped by silence. And in 2003, when she won the Oscar for The Hours, the world thought she'd finally healed. But if you look back at that moment, the trembling hands, the quiet voice, the tear that escaped before she could hide it, you realize that award wasn't a victory. It was a survival. Because The Hours wasn't just a movie about Virginia Woolf. It was a movie about women who are drowning quietly behind perfect smiles. And that was Nicole, drowning, smiling, performing, surviving. Behind the scenes, Tom's silence wasn't just personal, it was institutional. The Church of Scientology had labeled Nicole a suppressive person, or SP, a term used to describe anyone who questions or threatens the church's control. After the divorce, reports claimed their adopted children, Isabella and Connor, were told their mother was dangerous to their faith. Nicole, who had once believed she was marrying for love and protection, now found herself excommunicated from an entire part of her family, not by choice but by silence. Because in Scientology, silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the enforcement of obedience. It's the cutting off of communication, a way to erase someone without confrontation. Tom didn't need to say anything publicly. His silence did the work for him. And through that silence, Nicole was slowly erased from her children's lives, from his public image, from his story. That's the cruelty of erasure. It doesn't happen loudly. It happens quietly, invisibly, until the world forgets you were ever part of the picture. When Nicole finally began to rebuild her life, she was determined not to repeat the same mistakes. She told Vanity Fair in 2002, "I was willing to give up everything." It was a confession that haunted her for years. The idea that love could make her surrender herself completely. So, when she met Keith Urban in 2005, she thought she was writing a new story. A quieter one, a safe one. They married in 2006. And for nearly 2 decades, it looked like she'd found peace. 2 daughters, Sunday and Faith, country music awards, family trips, red carpet smiles. But love stories in Hollywood rarely end quietly. By 2025, the same cracks began to show. Sources close to the couple whispered that Keith was touring constantly, rarely home. Nicole was filming overseas. Their schedules didn't align. Their lives were moving in different directions. Sound familiar? It's the same phrase used in her divorce from Tom. But here's the part that few noticed. Keith signed the custody agreement 2 months before the world even knew about the divorce. Nicole filed in September. Keith had already moved out in July. Which means by the time the news broke, Keith had been gone for months. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. And again, he stayed silent. No interviews. No statements. No explanations. Just the same cold quiet that Tom once perfected. The blueprint of silence, repeated almost identically. So, what is it about Nicole Kidman that draws her to men capable of disappearing? Is it coincidence or something deeper? Psychologists call it the repetition compulsion, a subconscious drive to repeat familiar emotional patterns, even painful ones, in hopes of rewriting the ending. Maybe Nicole has spent her adult life trying to fix the original wound, to prove that this time, love wouldn't end in silence. But each time it has. First Tom, then Keith. 2 men who loved her in public and left her in silence. 2 men who smiled for cameras, but withdrew when the lights went off. And in both stories, Nicole's instinct was to fight, to hold on, to fix, to understand. But silence doesn't give answers. It only deepens the questions. There's something haunting about how Nicole talks about her first marriage, even decades later. In 2015, she told Harper's Bazaar, "It took me a very long time to heal. It was a shock to my system." That word, shock, comes up again and again. And that's the thing about silence. It doesn't just hurt, it disorients. You're left questioning reality itself. How can someone share your home, your children, your secrets, and then erase you without a trace? When Tom left, Nicole said, "I thought our life together was perfect." When Keith left, friends said she was fighting to save it. Same woman, same confusion, 2 decades apart. And if you look closely, the pain isn't about being left. It's about not being acknowledged. Because at least when someone argues, they still see you. Silence means you're invisible. Nicole has often said she married Tom for love. But she's also admitted she married him for protection. She was 23 when they met. Young, ambitious, and still learning how to survive in Hollywood. Tom was 28, already one of the most powerful men in the industry. And back then, Nicole believed being with Tom meant safety. She once said, "Being married to an extremely powerful man kept me from being sexually harassed. I married for love, but I also felt protected." That statement, made years later, carries a heartbreaking truth. Nicole thought protection meant love. But protection built on control isn't love, it's possession. And when the protector leaves, what remains is emptiness. Tom's silence was more than detachment, it was punishment. A silent message that said, "You're not worth my acknowledgement." And it worked. For years, Nicole avoided mentioning him in interviews too. Not out of hatred, but out of exhaustion. Because when someone refuses to see you, the effort to be seen becomes unbearable. 2 decades later, she finds herself back in that same quiet storm. The same headlines, the same phrases, the same lonely silence from a man she once trusted completely, and the same world watching her, analyzing her pain, without really understanding it. Because what Nicole Kidman has endured isn't just heartbreak, it's emotional invisibility. The kind that comes when your partners are capable of erasing you, even while standing beside you. Tom's silence became a brand, an almost mythical stoicism. Keith's silence is less theatrical, but equally cold. A slow fade out instead of a sudden cut. But for Nicole, the impact is identical. Both men loved her in public, both withdrew in private, and both left her to carry the story alone. That's the cruelty of Hollywood silence. It's not loud, it's not violent. It's clean, controlled, camera ready. It lets the men walk away looking composed while the women are left explaining what went wrong. And yet, through it all, Nicole has never spoken with bitterness. Even now, as the world speculates about her second heartbreak, she stays composed, dignified, private. Maybe she's learned that silence can't be defeated with noise. Maybe the only way to reclaim it is to turn it into art. Because Nicole doesn't speak her pain, she performs it. She turns her heartbreak into characters who whisper, who ache, who survive. Every time she steps on screen, she's telling the world, "I'm still here. I still exist." And maybe that's her quiet rebellion. Because if Tom Cruise chose to erase her, and Keith Urban chose to ignore her, then Nicole Kidman has chosen something stronger: endurance. To keep showing up. To keep speaking, even when others stay silent. To keep wearing heels, not as a joke, but as defiance. Tom Cruise's silence will likely last forever. It's part of his mythology now. The untouchable superstar who never looks back. Keith Urban's silence might fade sooner, but the damage is already done. Because once again, Nicole Kidman is left standing in the ruins of a love that ended quietly. But this time, she's not the same woman she was in 2001. She knows what silence means. She knows it's not peace, it's absence. And she's learned that the only voice that can break it is her own. So maybe the real story isn't Tom's silence or Keith's. Maybe it's Nicole's ability to live loudly in spite of it. Because sometimes the loudest sound in Hollywood isn't applause. It's the silence that follows. And what you choose to do with it.